every other week, or at this time because of the uh, crunch that we're in and getting to the question of separation that the village is going to be answering, um, have these little meetings where people can get together, either here or at a coffee shop or wherever, but so that people can say these are things they think should be happening. And it may be even outside of the whole realm of separation or merger, just things that they want to see the town get engaged in that is not happening currently. And have this sessions like that. I think that would be helpful for communication.
Do you call them coffee chats?
I do call
Yep.
them
Mm-hmm.
coffee
That's
chats.
what you're thinking?
Because I did go to the one
I've
that,
even tried to expand that to beer chats. If
ooh,
the so I'm not opposed to going to a place that has beverages of all kinds to show up in public because I understand not everybody's available at 9, 10, or noon.
right.
Yeah.
So I think that's one piece, and I think that where Matt was talking about the uh, shared and making it equal, I understand that the village has issues with the taxes, but if we're going to combine these things, then it should be 50-50. 42 is like a crazy number. It is. I don't get it. Uh, the town does not use the police force as often as does the village. That's just what the chief had said when we went to one of his coffee chats with the cop, and it. I just think it should be 50-50 if it's a shared thing, because who knows how many times they're going to come into your town, and if we do separate and Colchester has got too many holes to help us, to help the village have a alignment with them, with contract with them to do their services. Williston is a small police force. They can't do it. Sheriffs can't do it. And we're the most logical choice. Uh, You, instead of paying 100% and going out and having to do your own police force and have your own building, 50-50 is, I think, an altogether reasonable price, not 42.58. It's like, that's crazy making.
So what I'm going to catch for that is how to allocate the cost of shared expenses. And then I have what makes sense. Is it 50-50? Is it other percentage? What formula is fair?
I think so. For two separate entities, that's what it
Okay.
should be.
Okay.
And then when it comes to the services that Megan had spoken to, um, especially the childcare, I understand the angst around that. And I think we should be asking our bigger employers to offer childcare on site, because I think that's a huge piece, and it's something that's um, something that they could do for the town, having childcare on site and or supportive for childcare, and because we all don't have kids, and
Right.
I pay my education taxes. I don't have kids in this school. When my kids were little, there were people who were older who didn't have kids and they were paying for it. That's it's absolutely fine. And the shared piece, um, possibly. I mean, when it comes to the pool and recreation, my granddaughter was with me, and I took my daughter and her child to the pool. Well, they don't have a pool at our pool for the kids. So we went over to the town pool, the village pool, and it was no, it was, what was it, $19 for the three of us to use the pool for one day.
Mm.
They don't pay $19 to go on to Indian Brook each time they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pass for the whole time. I mean, that's another little issue there.
Mm-hmm.
And representation, I think that we do need to have districts. I think we need, that was one of the things that we spoke to greatly way back in 2006, and then 2015 we said it again, that we want to have districts. And this is for the town. If they separate, I still want to see districts. I want to have us have it so that your representative is your representative going into the meetings, and you can go over to their house. There's
Yep.
a community base for it. I think that's important. And having the information put out after the meetings that we have with our select board, and have something come out in Front Porch Forum and in another venue, whether it's Facebook from the select board, but this is what we discussed, this is what our answers were, and this is what we're going to do.
Okay.
So that people are clear what it is and they don't have to go to a 4-hour meeting.
Yep.
And or just go for a period of time to their little part that they are interested in.
Okay.
That-
It is starting to build up in my head because there are a bunch of
Okay.
things here. But
Okay.
so some of these things are noted around just in terms of cost and access to different shared places, depending on which entity you
Yep.
reside in. Noted here for sure. There's lots of different things about representation, but I think what you're talking about right now is just the ease of communication and staying up to date so that you don't have to sit through hours on a Saturday morning or whatever it is
Yep.
to stay in touch. And the childcare piece, I haven't added anything for that because it's just a little bit outside of,
Sure.
yeah, but it's a,
But I
duly
think it's
noted.
important.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Comment online. Harlan,
Harlan, have you spoken before?
I think we're gonna Deb, Harlan, and Gabrielle. I think.
Greg, I spoke at the very first forum. I had made a comment then, but I have not spoken since.
Deb, have you spoken before?
No, I haven't, but I love listening to Harlan.
I know.
Well, let's do this.
I'm gonna.
I'm gonna go Deb first and
I,
then Harlan
I
come back.
appreciate that compliment.
Yep.
All righty.
Okay, Deb.
Okay,
So
Deb.
I'll go brief, and I agree with a lot of what has been said, and I appreciate a lot of people stepping out and taking risk here.
Yep.
So real quickly, I want the select board to be aware that 50% of their constituents want to know what it's going to take for us to go for separation. The other 50% are going to be impacted by it. So I would ask them and encourage them to get with the timeline, work with the trustees, and help us because it will benefit us all.
And
I would also like to advocate for clear, accurate, and regular communication from the trustees and the select board. Sorry, it all goes to both the ways.
it does.
A comment about public safety and public health. For me, that's the foundation of freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I want all of our leaders to take the approach that the best option for the greatest good is the first priority, and economy of scale second.
So
Um,
down a little,
Down a little bit there, Deb, so I can figure out how to touch it.
So
So your comments about clear, accurate communication from both boards makes sense. That's in here.
what you've
What you just said
public
about public safety and services.
yeah.
Is there?
So yeah, any public safety or anything that has to do with public safety or public health. I think that that's the foundation of our freedom, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that's what makes us fabulous. And so when it comes to those types of decisions, I want the priority to be what is the best option for the greatest good. So obviously I want to continue to support the police department. And I want the economy of scale because that makes sense.
Right. Okay. So
Okay, so one of the things you're looking for are, I'm gonna put this under policing, but you're talking about services also in
public health.
public health.
Mm-hmm.
Let me
Just,
let me work.
let me work with this for a minute before you add more on, just because it makes sense to grab it. I don't know if it's anywhere else yet, so I'm gonna put it down in questions. Might pop up in one of those categories later. I think what you're saying is you're prioritizing clarity about public safety and public health.
Mm-hmm.
Clarity about decisions and changes that are being considered. Is that right?
Yes. And the greatest good for the TOV and the whatever the TIV. That irritates me, sorry.
That's okay. Okay.
And otherwise, I wouldn't really want any changes in any of the finances or any of the way that they're handled until after we have the separation vote.
Yeah.
Changes in, so what you're looking for, changes in budget, you're just trying to minimize how much that changes until there's the interim over.
Correct, correct. The one time I'll support status quo. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so just a couple more comments.
Yep.
But
and-
Move on.
Move on, Deb, sorry.
It's less than
Less that, I think what you're looking for is how are those
cost.
costs gonna change during this interim time? And you're really paying attention to it. You in particular want to keep status quo.
And
And I also recognize this interim phase is of an undefined amount of time.
so
So
status.
Yeah.
status, you know, that's a specific solution to
Yeah.
something that you're watching, which is
To just.
to just
Yeah,
try
in my
not.
mind, that's 2 years because that's about all the patients I have left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know where to put this either. I don't know if my brain is just frying out because it doesn't, or if it's just, this is so complex and you're all looking at so many different things.
It may.
And I've been thinking about this for 2 decades or plus. So, for me, this has been something that I've had plenty of time to chew on.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
I think you're paying attention to and wary of
any big.
any big budget changes during this interim time.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so just a couple of other comments from things that I've heard today, that everything I appreciate. That, first of all, it is not normal to pay 2 property taxes, and it's not normal to vote twice. And in the interim, and I don't like the us versus them, and I really would like in the interim if we could all find kindness. Oh, geez, I'm popular today. And then finally, transparency and bias awareness from all boards. I think that there are biases. I think it's obvious if you watch the YouTube remakes of these shows. It's clear. I'm on the Housing Commission and I serve both the village and the town. And when I started, I told everybody that I'm in the tank for separation. Well, first I was for merger and I was willing to give up 12 years. But anyway, another story. So I just think that people should be aware of their bias and to pay attention to that and minimize the executive session so that we don't have to feel like we don't know what's going on. I do feel like I'm divorcing myself, and the misinformation, I mean, there's like a Trump-like misinformation campaign that is underlying some of this that makes me concerned. And finally, the last thing I want to say is that I just really want to send out gratitude and love to the staff that are at the village and the town. You guys rock. I really want you to be held harmless to all of this. I want you to be treated with fairness and equity. And I think that one of the other things that makes us great, Megan Humphreys, that the reason I came to Essex was for our outstanding school system. And I want to thank everybody for everything they do.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Deb. That's a good shout out for different contributions that make this place strong and vibrant. Even when it's
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other comments, Ken? Right? Is that right?
Thanks, Jen. Ken Zignarlo, how are you?
You keep on asking what have I been paying attention to. I've been paying attention to the trustees, the select board, and the staff. What I'm seeing is that they're blowing it. I support the concept of separating and sharing. I suggested it 2 years ago. And what I'm seeing is ignoring the voters. 80% of village voters said, prepare a separation plan and share one thing only, police. And yet, what do we see? The trustees make requests to share lots of other things. They do pay attention to one thing, however, when. They were asked to do it in November, they're doing it in November. Hell or high water. The select board, very slow to respond. They're not helping the village figuring out what is it going to be like separated in a timely fashion to make that November date. Conflict there, obviously. These forums are a good example of where the select board has failed. We're always in the village. There are people outside the village that don't have great internet access that are not going to be participating. We don't really know what the position of the select board is on the separation. They've never really said, do we support it or don't we?
Okay, so one of the things you're looking for is good information about as the select board takes in information, and conditions are always changing. You're looking to track what is the particular position at any given time.
No, I'm looking for the select board and the trustees and the staff to do what the voters ask.
Again, I'm laughing because I don't know how to put this down here in a way that people will be able to
I'll say it again.
catch it.
The trustees and the select board and the staff should be doing what the voters ask.
Okay.
They asked for a separation plan.
So I'm going to ask a different kind of question. So when you're looking to see if voters is a huge group.
No, there's village voters voted. 80% said separate, share one thing.
So
please.
what would tell you that that response, that elected officials and staff
Are not doing that?
No, what would tell you that they are?
Just meeting to figure out how to share one thing, police.
Okay, so specific plans on how separation is going to move forward would give you an indication that they'd heard voters and are responding to it. And specifically, you're looking at policing. You're not so interested that all the
No,
other
look,
pieces.
That's what the voters asked for.
Okay.
It was a referendum.
I'm going to try to stay with you.
And finally, the staff. And how are they ignoring the voters on this separation question to share only one thing? They throw out other trial balloons to share other things. You've heard about it today. How to share fire, for example. And it's really interesting to see that the staff is suggesting a budget sharing only component when they've been doing that for public works for 6 or 7 years now, with the idea that we should have a full merger. But no, we only really have a budget merger. We haven't had that completed. So when staff completes the merger of the public works, then maybe we can talk about merging some other departments. But we should get that done first. I haven't gotten it done in 7 years. I think that needs to be done.
Okay, so here's why I'm pausing again, because I feel completely ineffective trying to figure out how to get some of these comments in a way that they're represented here.
You can watch it later on YouTube.
So this is a series of statements that I think you're wanting the select board to hear. I actually am really trying to figure out,
This is different, I know.
Yeah, it is a little different.
I tried to make it different.
So I value it. I just don't know how to use it here. So Ken, I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to hang with you for a
I
couple
think
more
the
minutes.
idea is simple. The
And-
voters asked for a specific thing, and the select board and the trustees and the staff need to honor that.
What else do you have that you wanted to be able to say? And then I'm going to see if I can.
Final
any
thing.
pieces. Yeah.
They need to get out of the way. They're blowing it. They need to get somebody to do these negotiations, some citizens who can actually come up with solutions. I met with a villager just the other day, and together we were talking and discussing the whole separation thing, and we came up with ways to solve a number of the problems. The citizens, I think, can really do it. 3 or so from village, town outside the village, I think could come up with a good negotiating plan. Let the select board and the trustees pay attention to their day-to-day business, and then that group would present a plan, which, guess what, might actually be received positively. Because it came from the people who are going to live with it. That's the gist of it.
So I think, if there was one thing I was going to pull out of that, Ken, that I think, I don't know if it's on here yet or not. It's about, but it might be in representation, how elected officials right now are getting input from the community around different options.
They got it last March with an 80% vote.
But you're not talking about the vote. You've just moved on to not just talk about vote, but solutions. As people come up with different pathways and solutions, how that input, what are the forums to get that input under consideration?
These are very imperfect. They're not random samples. They're not the population. They're just people who want to speak. The vote is what counts.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Forums by themselves, you're right. It is selective, and a vote is a measure of the widest kind of opinion that you can get, or yes.
It's authoritative. It's what has to happen, right?
So, is there something that anything else you haven't said yet, Ken? That you
No, I've completed.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to keep it brief if I can.
So I'm going to assume that a lot of what you've said about the input, representation, trying to get sort of the discourse to be.
I think that the trustees and the select board and the staff are ruining it. We're not going to get a good separation plan. It's going to be muddy with all kinds of things included that weren't asked for.
Okay.
And folks are going to say, this is not what we asked for. And it's going to create problems for the village voters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the town voters don't get a choice. But is there going to be a problem? It's not what was asked for. It was very clear. You should read. If you haven't read the question, you should read it.
So I'm going to time you out there, Ken, because I know I've got other comments. And it's not so important that I get it as much as it is that your community understands it. But part of what you're saying is it's so tricky to manage expectations in this particular issue and on this scale, like expectations about what a vote means or what should or shouldn't be done or what shared means. And that all of those conversations are pretty complicated to have on the public scene.
And that's the problem.
And
the voters didn't ask for that. They asked for a simple thing. Now, if they don't like how it falls out, great. You learned something. Okay. What I asked for wasn't such a good idea. We vote no, we try something else.
Okay. Have I honored what you came here to say?
I don't know. I have to read it. It's a very challenging thing you have to do.
Okay.
I tried to keep it simple, but stay focused on that one concept. Voters ask for something. Why is it that the trustees come forward with a 12 priority list of other things? Why is it that staff suggests, hey, let's try merging the budgets of the fire department and some other things?
Okay, here's where I'm going to put this. I'm going to ask you for a question that I'm going to write your question down here rather than trying to understand it in the categories. If you had one question, Ken, that you were asking, I think it's around why is this separation issue that seems so simple getting so complicated?
It shouldn't.
Is that your question? It's sort of rhetorical.
And the answer is it shouldn't, because the question wasn't that complicated. It was really quite simple. Prepare a separation plan, share one thing, police. That's it.
Okay.
80% of the village voters voted for that. How are those folks going to feel when they find out that not just that, we want to do this, and that?
Okay.
It basically creates fog and smoke.
Yep.
And you've heard all the complaints you've heard are related to that in a way. People are saying the communication, right?
Yep.
You're hearing that? That's what's coming out.
Okay.
And the select board needs to help. And it's, they're asking to share one thing. They should focus on that one thing. This is what we propose for police.
Okay.
That's it.
I'm going to say, please help simplify. Period. Why is a separation issue which seems so simple, one shared service, police, getting so complicated? Please help simplify. I think, Ken, I have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
I don't have to go after all, it turns out. My thing got canceled.
Oh boy, there you go. All right, so online. So Harlan, I believe you're up.
Great, thank you. I'm going to try to keep this short because that was the game plan. So a lot of the problems that I'm hearing is transparency and trust. And one of the things that I'm kind of keeping an eye on, we've got a joint meeting coming up Monday, and there's a couple of asterisks in there where those are going to move into executive session, or it looks like they're going to move into executive session. And it's a little hard to be transparent and trust our select board members and our trustee members if they are, and I get the fact that they can go in there because technically they're contract negotiations.
Yep.
But I feel like somebody should be able to direct where we could have that conversation open in the public eye until maybe it gets to a point where there is some legal advice that would be needed and it moves in. So my concern is the transparency and the trust, and the only way that we're going to gain that. And I'll try to give a quick example. If they were talking about something that I disagreed with, and then it went into executive session afterwards, I would have the opportunity to send an email to either that select board or that trustee and say, I need you to explain this to me because this is my thought process on what you were talking about in that particular area. So I'm a little concerned with the amount of executive sessions, and if Greg would love to correct me, I would appreciate that. The asterisk is there to say that this could go into an executive session, but does not mean that it needs to go into an executive session. And then, which is going to make it just a little bit longer, a quick note. None of this is simple, and I'm not looking to get into an argument with Ken, but just to show you how complicated this is. He believes the vote was very simple. The fact that it was a non-binding resolution complicates it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only so many things that you can put on a vote. And the priority, we have 2 fire departments, we have 2 recreation departments, we have 2 libraries, we don't have 2 police stations. So on that non-binding resolution, they put the police department as the top priority because we do not have 2 police departments. So again, transparency, and the only way we're going to trust you if there's more transparency. So the least amount of executive sessions, and if the conversation goes sideways, then let's jump into executive session at that point.
Yep.
Thanks.
Did you have a clarification, Greg?
those asterisks, Harlan, it means that there is an option to go into executive session. There's some public information in the packet as the select board response to the trustees' proposal. So I imagine that the two boards will discuss that in public, whether or not they go into executive session afterwards, whether it's either board or both boards or the board separately. I do not know. See how that plays out on Monday night, but I do expect some of the discussion to take place in an open session.
And I'll add that again, it is very hard for two bodies who want the best for their citizens, who hear something in a meeting, to then discuss what they may want to do or how to counter in the meeting when they need to talk to each other as to what as a group they want. And that's what executive session would allow them to do, so that the other side, if you want to call it the other side, doesn't hear all your thoughts and what you might want to counter with and why. And so it's just very hard to do this completely in a public open forum, because it just is. But I've heard all the comments. It's just very hard. If you were doing contract negotiations with, let's say, the police, and I wasn't allowed to go talk to my lawyer about, let's say, hey, if we do this and do that, and then they hear everything that I'm saying as to what's a possibility, why would they bargain with me if they already know what I might do or not do?
Yep.
That's just very difficult.
Yeah. So
negotiating without the ability to caucus is nearly impossible, and it's duly noted, and it's come up through a couple forums too about how.
To the extent that anything can be shared and transparent about even what the topic is, then that's helpful. So I'm only going to take comments right now from folks who haven't spoken, mostly because I know there's still a couple people waiting and we're already over time. Is there anybody still? Thank you, Harlan. Is there anybody still in here who has something to say on site? It's okay. If you can speak today. No, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to go to Gabrielle, and we'll see. Come on up if you.
Thank you, Irene Renner. Couple of things. I'd like to reinforce what everyone has said about clear and transparent communication. And I would add it's really important to have clear and transparent policies. That is, if people want to share more equally the taxation, then I would suggest that the select board use its powers to tax outside the village residents for the outside the village library and fire department and those things that are thought to serve the town outside the village more. Of course, they serve everyone in the town. But again, if we're looking to equalize taxation, let's be clear and transparent about it. Let's not merge budgets as we did for public works in good faith. And yet here we are 7-8 years later, and the town still does not control public works as those of us who were on the select board at the time were promised it would. Let us learn from those past mistakes, not to backdoor merge anything without seeing it through. When public works is done, then we can talk about perhaps combining other things like fire, capital, and staff that may or may not be one department ever. As it was said before, let's not merge before we separate. Let's wait till the November vote passes or fails, because we don't even know if separation is going to pass when it's a binding vote. When I hear staff say everyone is paying, that is, of course, a misnomer, because 58% of any town tax revenue comes from the outside the village folks. So it's not equitable just because everyone is being charged for it. Please don't rush things. I like Ken's suggestion for having a group of citizens come up with their own separation plan and having the boards vet it, because there's not a lot of creativity here, and we need to have some creative solutions in this town.
And because it's not before, it's on this list in terms of representation in committee groups.
Great. Last fall, the village sent an incomplete merger plan to its voters, and it passed. Even if the town's merger plan had passed in March, the House Government Operations Committee would have been in a bind because statute says the same merger plan has to come from both municipalities. So let's not please skirt over details, and let's make sure, instead of rushing to a vote this November on whatever it is that gets thrown together in the next few weeks, that we actually have more citizen involvement and we put off the vote until March, when everyone inside the village and outside the village can vote on a separation plan that everyone has taken time to understand. I heard someone reference how important it was that the two rec departments are working together. They came to the select board several years ago and begged to co-locate. They told us it was for the benefit of the customers because one-stop shopping would be the cat's meow. And indeed, it's been wonderful to have one brochure and one place for people to go. And yet Brad Luck threatened at a recent trustee meeting that they would perhaps be splitting up, that perhaps the Essex Rec program would have to find a new home. And that's really unfortunate because that tells me that those of us who had misgivings all along and thought it was just another backdoor merger may have been right. Please, oh please, think about the customers first.
So I am going to pause you there for a minute. Although maybe that message isn't actually for me. When you think about retaining childcare and what you're paying attention to in this interim phase is noticing that signals, people can
I'm seeing veiled threats, and I don't like that.
Okay.
As someone who was put on the spot and told, really, no, this isn't a backdoor merger. We're just co-locating, and it's really for the benefit of the citizens. I want the current select board to understand there's a lot of mixed messages that get sent, and they need to trust their guts. Because time always tells what the truth is and who's really working for the customer and who's just really working for themselves. So please, select board, trust your gut.
Okay. So that also loops back to how decisions are made and how they're made with transparency.
Absolutely. And common sense is often missing here too. And I think that's what the beauty of having a citizen committee form over the fall and winter. Citizens don't have to worry about reelection. They don't have to worry about keeping up appearances. They can sit in a room and they can hammer out a separation plan that's purely based on common sense. And I think it will.
Yep. And it's mostly based in the interest of time because now we're more than 20 minutes over.
Yep.
But I remember hearing you before and putting into these notes just that idea about, where does that advisory information come from? Where are the opportunities for people to discuss and then share those plans or proposals?
Right.
It's here.
Okay. But I think what Ken was proposing was a separate group working on a separation plan, and that has not been brought up at all in any forum or any meeting.
See how it's framed here.
Okay.
Just
Thanks.
See if there's something else that needs to be adjusted. I think it was under representation. And it's here. What options could be set up for the interim phase to increase representation to inform planning? There's an advisory committee idea that was noted. And that's not what you're suggesting. Right. I will note it here. I think the hard thing is that I didn't really set this up to brainstorm a lot of different specific approaches. I'll note it. But also recognizing it's so imperfect because there might be 20 people who have different approaches that they'd want to suggest. And I didn't set up this process to gather those.
So the idea would be to put off the November vote until we have a better process that's just more thoughtful. This feels very rushed to me to try to do this in the summer.
It seems appropriate in a slightly different space, which is down at the bottom. And that's about, is this time frame, like where are the adjustments?
That'd be great. Yep. Is it a reasonable time frame?
And the interest there is in more education or input. Education, interaction, exchange, input. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Appreciate your time.
Gabrielle, you're up.
Thanks, Jen. One more brief piece of feedback and then one more broad. I think I understand now how the public works budget and funding works, and the idea of duplicating that with the fire department. And I have real concerns about that model. As a town voter, I'm really concerned that the village board, if I understand this correctly, creates the public works budget for the village, and then that is delivered to the select board. And of course, as a town voter, I get to vote on that as part of my overall budget. But I I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me, and I don't think that's a good model to replicate for the fire department. So I just don't like that whole. I appreciate the intention behind the public works budget arrangement that we have now, and the proposal for us to consider from the fire department. I've been thinking about this in the weeks since we had the public forums, and it just doesn't sit right that one municipality makes the budget and then just kind of that gets put into another municipality's budget. It just doesn't sit well.
Gabrielle, can
Yeah.
you figure out where there's a place to capture that in these notes where it lives?
Well, I'm not the first person to bring this up. So is there somewhere else where someone has given input about the fire department and public works?
Yeah, I don't even know. It's such a big blind spot for me. I'm not even sure why I don't have it here. I'm just going to start another category at the bottom, and then I'll try to put it in after. Yeah.
I think you'll find the affinity later on when you look at it.
Yeah.
And then a more, I think one that's more dear to my heart is coming back to communication and information, facts, knowledge about the way that our services work and the way that they're funded. And it's a lot for us as citizens to get our heads around. There's some of us who come and speak to you that have more knowledge than others. And even then, we're sometimes prone to having a misunderstanding of information and facts. The sidewalks have really stuck out to me as one of those. I think that most of us as residents, no matter where we live in the town, don't seem to have a really solid understanding of why it is that the town sidewalks are not being plowed and maintained in the same way that the village sidewalks are. I think I understand it, and I think that I hear a ton of people who I wonder don't understand it.
Okay.
My understanding of why town sidewalks are not being plowed with the same efficacy as village sidewalks are is because of the cost. I could be wrong. I don't know if Evan or Greg have any information about that, and it doesn't need to come out now, but I would suggest perhaps the select board and staff think about an item on the agenda at the select board meetings during the interim period where common topics of conversation that they're hearing or feedback that they're getting from residents, where there seems to be a lack of clear understanding across the board about something that they have clear understanding about, could be provided to us. Don't be afraid to repeat things. Trust me, it takes us all, I'm speaking for myself for sure, 2, 3, 4 times to really go, oh, wait, I think I get it now. So be patient with us, give us the information a few different times. And I think having a standing item on the select board agenda about the provision of services and the way that we're taxed in the town and how that relates to the way that the village taxes impact the town budget and don't. I think in the case of the sidewalks, the fact that the village does pay to plow our own sidewalks has nothing to do with the fact that the town does or does not. I've never been asked to vote on a big plan to plow the town sidewalks. So I think I've heard it would cost quite a large amount of money, but I don't know. If you're hearing from residents they want their sidewalks plowed, then make it clear to us what it would cost for that to happen and put it to a vote, or whatever the select board chooses. And that's just one example. So I think there are understandably a lot of mixed beliefs, perceptions, understandings, versions about things that are simply based in there are facts that could be made more clear to us as residents, and then we form our own opinions about that. You're going to have diversity of opinions,
Yep.
but we shouldn't have diversity of facts. I think there's some things out there that all of us could use some clarity on, and maybe a consistent method or opportunity for the select board and staff to address those for us. The more pressing ones would be helpful for us, especially in the interim period.
Okay. It's
It's always funny.
as when you're sitting in between conflicting parties as a mediator, you assume that everyone will have facts, but they're all using them in a different way, and it's a really complex thing. Um, Gabrielle, here's what I've put this in at least one place. Are there ways to build in predictable, iterative opportunities that could be at an SB meeting, but it leaves the option that there could be other options too, to correct information and give information or provide a Q&A? And I think in particular, you're talking about describing the rationale behind discrepancies that people might notice and wonder about.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful for all of us. And I think it would also perhaps address some of the frustrations that people are experiencing with the um, select board meetings, where I often feel like I hear people repeatedly bringing forward information, and it doesn't feel like they're really being heard. I imagine they are, but it's not. There's no visible way to know that they're really listening to people who are showing up time and again, asking for information or asking for a service or offering to help in some way. And there doesn't seem to be the loop doesn't get closed. So I like the idea of it being iterative, and providing some accountability back to the community and response back to people. Sometimes the answer can be no. That's fine. We don't always all get what we ask for, but to bring some closure to topics and issues that people have been bringing to the select board. I'm not one of those people, but I've heard people coming forward and asking for things, and I feel like it's just unresolved and not answered. So I think that iterative opportunity to address common topics that are being talked about in the community, to make sure that all of us are working from, as best we can, the same pieces of information, form our own opinions as we will, but the same pieces of information.
Yep. Okay. Did you have other
Thoughts?
No. Thanks, Jen.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. In my mind, I'm preparing to start close down. I don't know if there's other folks online who have not spoken yet who wish to. If so, would you raise your hand and just give me a sense of the volume? Okay. And each person in this room has had an opportunity to speak.
Can I just throw out a clip?
A what?
Just a little clip. When I was growing up in New Jersey, every person, every household had to do their own sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, a little clip about each person doing their own sidewalk in front of their house, and yeah, and that's how it used to work. I'll stop sharing here for a moment then.
You too? And my neighbors, because that's what my dad told me to do.
So let's do this. Here's the next step from where I'm concerned with anyway. Later on this afternoon, I'll take the notes that you've seen them being developed, but it is a little bit of shorthand and a little bit messy. They're not going to change that much. You'll still see yourself reflected there, hopefully, if I've done my job well. And then that memo will go to the select board and the trustees to use for their next joint meeting. It doesn't give them a lot of time to think about it, but at least it's available.
When's the next joint meeting again? Monday?
Monday,
Yeah, meeting Monday night.
23rd, 6:30, here in this room, because this is as Aiden will fix the stuff, this is the best room that we have for virtual.
Any closing comments, Evan, Greg?
Just a quick thank you to all the citizens over the 3 forums who have come in person, did it virtual, sent us emails. We do the best we can. We take a lot of this information, and with 21,000-ish people coming from different places in their lives and in their situations, it's a very interesting process. Thanks to Jen for all of her patience and her quick on the fly, taking people's thoughts to Town TV. I know we had some technical difficulties today, but in general, we're trying, and we're gonna put it in. But for the people in the room, you're not required to leave immediately, but you are gonna need to leave at some point. And I'm gonna stay here for a few minutes. I kind of saw that some people might have had one more comment, but we'll take it offline.
Take it offline. Yeah, I do want to say thank you to everyone online and in the room, but also folks who are going to be watching or paying attention to these notes going forward for your civility and your participation and your ability to hang into the conversation, because it's not a conversation that happens once. It is definitely iterative, but it's also in the engagement that you get to learn and keep expanding and evolving ideas. So not a static process by any means. Thank you so much for being part of it. Good to go?
Yeah, just I'll echo the thank yous for everybody who participated and showed up, and thank you again, and enjoy your weekends.
One more last thing. There are people from our staff that are not in this room that help put these on. Thank you to several staff members for giving of your time. Much appreciated. I will get back to you later.
Boy, take care, everyone.